please take their seats again? So, what is universal design? Now, the standard definition is universal design is design of products so they can be used by as many people as possible. That usually is seen as applying to accessibility as products for people with disabilities, and those are the examples I'm going to be using today. However, universal design also covers design for people who speak a variety of different languages, people who have a variety of different experiences, people who are at various points along the age spectrum, and so forth. So that's what universal design is. What is good universal design? Well, there are potentially a number of definitions, but here's mine. Whatever works. So for today's presentation, which is going to go very fast, I'm going to be talking about the history of mainstream products that have been used for universal design, accessibility purposes. I'm going to be talking about specific products designed for people with disabilities that have gone mainstream, and the goal, if I'm successful, is to blur the lines between them so that we're not talking about universal design, we're not talking about mainstream design, we're just talking about good design. So one thing about universal design is it doesn't have to be fancy. In Japan, a designer was tasked with figuring out how to design a fire alarm for deaf-blind people. So what he came up with was something that sprayed wasabi, Japanese horseradish, taking advantage of the sense of smell. So and wasabi is pretty pungent, so it'd be pretty hard to miss that there was something going on. Curb cuts were originally put into place so that people using wheelchairs could get across the street. But studies have found that's actually the great minority of people using curb cuts. They're more often used by people with bicycles, delivery people, parents pushing strollers, and so forth. This is a turtle that was designed for parents to make sure that their baby's bath water wasn't too hot. It changes color if the water is too hot. It can be also used, although it's not marketed this way, by adults who have spinal cord injuries who may not be able to sense water temperature. So even something this simple can enhance a great deal of independence. Very often universal design products get labeled as, oh, those are just for lazy people. Such as these prism glasses. I found a review of this last week that says, oh yeah, prism glasses, you can lie in bed and read. How lazy can you get? Well, I have a good friend who has a lot of back problems. She's also the director of a major disability organization. She has a lot of reading she needs to do. And when her back flares up, she needs to be in bed. So she can use these prism glasses, get her work done, and be in the position that she needs to be in to be comfortable. Now, sometimes, less often, assistive technology is marketed for the mainstream. For example, for a while there were over-the-counter hearing aids that were marketed as, oh, this will give you super hearing so you can know what your neighbors are doing. So you wouldn't have the label of being hard of hearing, you would have the label of being nosy. One thing that's not talked about nearly enough in the world of universal design is aesthetics. The wheelchair wheel cover on the left doesn't really serve any functional purpose. But what it does say is, you may think from my wheelchair that I can't walk, but you know from this wheelchair cover that's hot pink and has zebra stripes that I am cool. On the other hand, some people want to euphemize as much as possible. So for example, in the 1800s, when ladies were sitting around parlors with their fans, there were some fans that had ear trumpets built in, so that ladies who are hard of hearing could participate in the conversation as well as anybody else without necessarily everybody knowing that they had a hearing disability. And the modern equivalent of that is that there now are hearing aids that look exactly like iPods. That isn't to say that universal design can't cause new problems. The telephone originally came out of experiments that Alexander Graham Bell was doing to try to find accommodations for his deaf wife. And of course, the telephone became the biggest barrier for deaf and hard of hearing people in the 20th century. But design evolves, and sometimes it ends well-ish. With mobile devices that have texting built in, that's a natural product that people who are and are not deaf can use equally well. However, the word prediction, which is a long-time accessibility feature that's built in, still sometimes turns flooding into flamingos. So the bugs will get worked out eventually. So for those of you who came to this presentation wanting to know about the Tryst, this is a picture of Pellegrino Turri. And Pellegrino Turri was an inventor in the early 1800s. And he had a friend who was a countess. The rumor is that he was in love with her and she with him. Her situation was that she was blind. Her disability was that she was severely married. So whether or not that rumor is true, that he needed a way for her to write him love letters or just wanted a way for her to be able to communicate with him, what he ended up creating was an early prototype of the typewriter, which of course computer design then took a great deal of its inspiration from. So in this very quick overview, I would encourage designers to keep a wide audience in mind. The alphabet of accessibility issues at tinyurl.com/NA8FTVM provides a wonderful overview of just who your audience might contain. For purchasers, look for a range of features, look for flexibility in products so that everybody can set things up the way they need them to be. And for everybody, think about reducing stigma. If you or somebody else is using a product that seems to scream accessibility, it shouldn't. People should be able, whether or not they have a disability, to use a design that meets their needs, and that's just good design. So I thank you. My email is jbvincen@umish, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.